Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are yet another relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene. From what I can gather, despite their short existence, they've been very experimental and done lots of different kinds of beers, which I think is always a good approach to take. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Subbe Brgygeri here in Sweden. It's a style that I very much enjoy, one that we've been reviewing quite a few of on the channel over the last little while as well, and it's also one of the stronger beers that they do as well, actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a bit north of me here in Lund to Varberg, which is to the south of Gothenburg, Göteborg on the Swedish west coast, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Subbe Bryggeri. So this particular beer is simply called Barley Wine. It comes in at 14% ABV, so it is a little bit of a beast, and if memory serves me correctly, this beer was released as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2023. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. Always a nice introduction to a brewery when you find a good imperial stout or barley wine. So yeah, we'll crack on with this and see what it's all about. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, or will do in the future I should say, from Subbe Bryggeri. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So you can just go into the homepage, use the search bar and put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. That's being added to quite a lot, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries in there as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Subbe Bryggeri. So, Subbe Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Varberg, and the company was founded back in 2018 by Martin and Titi Sunesson. So Martin worked as a chef for many years and had always been interested in quality food and drink, but Titi actually has a background as a massage therapist, and she also worked in sales and management. But apparently when they moved home to Varberg, Martin was invited round to a neighbour's house and to try his home-brewed beer, and he was really impressed with it, and this pushed him to try brewing for himself, which he started to do with his father in his basement. So he then went on to study brewing technology in Ludvika, which is quite a well-known programme here in Sweden, incidentally, and then he worked for a period of time at Bryggeri in Landvetter, just outside of Gothenburg, before officially founding Subbe Bryggeri for himself. But the brewery is based on Jonssons Gård in the countryside just outside of Varberg, and this site is also home to a pottery, a florist, a bakery, an art gallery and a gym, and another brewery these days too. But over the years they've gradually built up the brewery equipment by adding new tanks and a new bottling line and stuff like this, and apparently the brewery takes its name from the Subbe Lighthouse, which was an important place to Martin and Titi personally with regards to the relationship. I think, you know, they went and met there and walked past it and all these kind of things. That's the impression I got from the article that I was reading. But as of May 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you, they've done a variety of different styles. They've done imperial stouts, different kinds of lagers, different kinds of IPAs and stuff like that, but this is the one that just kind of caught my eye because I do enjoy a good barley wine. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Subbe Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at this beer itself. So you can see the artwork on this one is pretty straightforward. I'm not sure how well you can see it actually, but the brewery symbol is kind of embedded behind the label there. You can see the lighthouse, but you can also see it on the back label here, so you can see that nice kind of lighthouse as well, which is good. But plain black bottle cap on top of this one, and you can see the bottle is pretty damn full. As we say, it's a 330ml bottle. Like we mentioned earlier, it's 14% ABV, this one, so a little bit of a monster. I actually forget what I paid for this beer, to be honest with you, but you know, you will pay a little bit more for barley wines. This was probably about 70 or 80 Swedish kroner, so yeah, let's say 80, because that seems a little bit more reasonable. So 80 Swedish kroner translates to roughly €8, about £7 sterling, somewhere in the region of like $9 American, something like that. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff actually, I have to say. But yeah, for me there's two different kinds of barley wines. You've got the English barley wines and the American ones. The English ones tend to be a little bit more kind of roasty and toasty, if you like. And the fruits tend to be a little bit kind of drier, whereas the American barley wines are a little bit more oily and the fruits tend to be more round and sweet and stuff like this. So yeah, always interesting stuff whenever you get to try either of these styles, and I'm curious to see where this one leans. But yeah, I think we can crack this beer open and have a little look at it. The barley wine, 14% ABV from Subbe Bryggeri on Jonssons Gård, just outside of Varberg on the Swedish west coast. So let's do this one. I think that's Halland, if I remember correctly, Halland County. So there we are. Now that we've got that lined up again, so my OCD is happy, and yeah, we can have a little look at the beer. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that the beer has poured with about 1/4 to 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head. That is fading away to be a very thin foamy layer in the middle, and you've got a nice kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass. You've got some medium-sized bubbles there on the bottom, but a few kind of smaller foamy ones just sitting on top of that. And then, yeah, it looks pretty nice, but yeah, you can see that head is going to fade away very, very quickly. In terms of the colour of this beer, this is actually one of the brighter barley wines that I've come across. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of that beer as well. But yeah, when it comes to barley wines, barrel aging can affect it a little bit, but quite often the biggest factor is the different types of malts and the length of the wort boil. But like I said, this is one of the brighter barley wines that I've come across. In terms of colour, I would describe this one as being like a very rich amber, but it has got a little bit of a kind of reddy tint to it. Maybe a good way to describe it as well is like, you know, a kind of mahogany type colour. It's not quite chestnut, it's not quite dark enough to be chestnut, but I think describing this beer as having a mahogany colour would be quite fitting. But yeah, one or two little bits of sediment particle floating around in this one, which you would expect from a barley wine, of course. But yeah, otherwise the beer looks very nice, but quite clear, this one. And as I say, just going from the colour of this, I don't think this one has a particularly long wort boil. I could be wrong, but you know, it's quite common with barley wines, you know, to get the highly caramelised sugary notes. They do often wort boil these for at least, like, you know, 6 hours or something like that. That is something that you need to keep in mind with these beers. But yeah, appearance-wise, nothing untoward about this one other than the brightness of the colour. It's certainly within the range of what you would expect from this style, though. But let's have a wee look at the aroma and just see what this beer is going to be about. I'm very curious to see where on the barley wine spectrum this beer is going to lie. Oh yeah. I think it's going to lean more toward the American side of things, but there are a few little English characteristics in there. We'll say that straight away. So, in terms of the barley wine and things like that, or in terms of the aroma, I should say, when you sugar the beer up, you do get a little bit of everything out of this one. So what I was saying about this beer having a little bit of English character as well, and having a little bit of an American character, the sweetness is definitely on the American side of things, but underneath that you do get some of the more kind of dry characters that you would expect of an English barley wine. So that's worth noting here. Yeah, so for me, the character that you get out of this one is pretty interesting, I have to say. So yeah, for the yeah, from this perspective, I would say that we'll just try and break this beer down and describe it a bit more in depth. But from the perspective of barley wine, it kind of gives you everything you'd want. You've got some nice big fruity characters in there. You've got a good little bit of sweetness. You have got a wee bit of breadiness, and you've also got a little bit of the kind of hoppy character in there as well. Remember, barley wine comes from the family of beers. You've got pale ale, IPA, double IPA, and then barley wine. These are all related to each other through their hop to malt ratio. When it comes to session IPAs, essentially what they do is they take the IPA malt to hop ratio, put less malt in, and so it's less alcoholic, whereas with the modern triple and quadruple IPAs, they take the double IPA malt to hop ratio, they put more malt in, and so thus you have a bigger beer, if you like. But yeah, when it comes to the barley wines, these usually have, I'm not sure, I would need to see a brew sheet to tell you how the ratio goes, but the barley wine is meant to be the big brother of these family of beers. And you can smell this one, it gives you everything you would want, the kind of hoppiness, the sweetness, and so on. But let's break the beer down and describe the aroma for you a wee bit more in depth. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got a little bit of a kind of fresh, brown bready bread crust coming out of this beer, and I really like how that goes together. Yeah. So on the on that bread crusty backbone, you have a nice little bit of it's kind of like a fresh, as I say, it's like a fresh kind of brown bready bread crust that's in there. Further forward on that, you've got a little touch of woody character in there, and there's maybe like a teeny little hint of vanilla or something. I get a little bit of vanilla out of this one, but yeah, fresh kind of brown bready bread crust in there. On top of that, you certainly get a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character. There's a little touch of white bread to this one as well, actually, and then on top of that, you have a wee bit more. You've got a lot of brown sugar coming out of this one, so there's a little bit of a roasty toasty brown sugary character to this one, but it's quite a sweet roasty toastiness that you get. And then, yeah, above all of that, you get a little bit of the more, you can smell there is a little bit of that leathery, highly caramelised brown sugar in there, so you do get a wee touch of that leathery brown sugary note out of this one, but I would add not too much. This beer has, I can tell from the aroma that this one hasn't had too long a wort boil. So yeah, you can smell that in this one quite clearly. But on top of that, you have a little bit of you definitely have a little bit of a more kind of sweet caramel in the dead centre of the nose. You've got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character as well, and perhaps some treacle molasses notes. So there's quite a few wee interesting things going on in this particular beer. But yeah, I do like how that goes together actually. I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, you've got a nice little bit of you have got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. So yeah, nice little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little touch of herbal character, and you do have some nice. You've got a good little bit of floral aromaticity to this one as well. And then right at the front of the nose, you get a little bit of a more kind of grassy, zesty sort of thing too. So the green component, you could obviously age this beer, and the thing you're going to get with that is that the hoppy, the green component is going to gradually drop out of the beer as time goes on. But with this one, yeah, you do get a little bit of you do get a mix of things going on actually. You've got, as I say, I think the most prominent part of the green component for me is the grassy side of things, and there's just a little bit of floral and earthy character behind it. That's probably a fair enough description. But on the fruity side of things, for me, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting because you've got a mix of different things. You are getting, there's a little bit of the kind of drier sultana, peary type things, kind of dates as well. Like I'm getting some of the English fruits, but on top of that you're getting the more sweet American fruit. So there's definitely some fig in there. There's a little bit of raisin and plum, and some blackcurrant and blackberry. But as I say, under that you're getting the dates. You're getting you're getting the dates. You're getting the pear, the sultanas, a little bit of prune as well in there. Like I said earlier, American IPAs tend to have the more round and oily fruits, whereas the English barley wines tend to have a little bit more of a kind of drier, fruity character. But regardless, the aroma of this one is pretty damn nice, I have to say, and I do like how it pieces together. I'm just really curious to see how everything goes together in the actual flavour of this one. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. But I think we should have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. I just noticed on the side here as well, it says this beer is best before the 9th of the 1st, 2020. I wonder how they arrive at that date, to be honest with you, because a barley wine probably would last even longer than that. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, this is the barley wine, 14% ABV, my first beer from Subbe Bryggeri, just outside of Varberg in Halland here in Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's pretty damn nice. Yeah, that's a solid take on the barley wine. And I have to say, one of the things I've often said, like I said, it feels like a good while since I've done a beer from a Swedish brewery that I've not encountered before. Which is something I do need to fix, to be honest with you. Just been distracted by other things in recent times. But yeah, it's always interesting visiting breweries like this. This is a really solid barley wine, and you can feel it still has a little bit of that. It still has a little bit of that kind of rawness and kind of homebrewedy type character to it in a sense. But yeah, I like coming to Swedish brewers like this who are just, these guys are only a couple of years old. They're still kind of getting started and things like that, but they're doing, if this beer is anything to go by, they'll be doing some solid stuff. I like this one, I really do. You can kind of tell from the flavour right off. I'm pretty sure what I said about it not having too long a wort boil is right. It feels like it's maybe had the kind of standard 6 hours. Potentially this one is very good as it is, but I'd say, maybe giving it a little bit of a slightly longer wort boil could be an interesting thing to do with this, and just getting a wee bit more kind of dryness on the back end of this one would be quite nice, because this, but again, if you probably age it a little bit, you'd probably get some of that as well. Maybe we are drinking this one quite fresh, I don't know, but as it is, it's a really nice take on the barley wine. This one at 14% ABV, it is a little bit of a beast. And I found with barley wines, yeah, that the higher ABV they are, the nicer the maturation is. So yeah, maybe I am just drinking this one a little bit young, but it's a style, as I say, that I do enjoy, and I was just very keen to see what this one was and get a review from these guys out there, because I've heard that these guys are doing some really nice stuff, and I was told that the bigger beers are the best ones that they do, and this one hasn't disappointed, it really hasn't. So thumbs up to Subbe Brgygeri for this. Let's try and break it down and just describe the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth. But yeah, this is nice. You do get a wee bit of warmth down the chest here, though, I will say that, but it's good. Yeah, so where do we start with this then? Middle third of the palate, backbone of the beer. Absolutely, you get a little bit of that kind of raw, sort of bread crusty character coming out of this one. So you got that lovely kind of roasty, toasty bread crust in there. So yeah, nice kind of roasty, toasty, bread crusty character for the backbone. Like I said, further forward on that middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of woodiness in there, which is great. And you can, you definitely get that. And then above that, you get a wee bit more of a you definitely get a little bit more of a kind of you start to get more of it. There is like an almost very slightly rye bready character in there. So above the bread crust you've got a little bit of rye bread, then you've got a more kind of wholemeal bready character above this one, and the wholemeal brown bread has a little bit of sweetness to it. So yeah. So yeah, I like how that, as I say, I really do like how that pieces together. And yeah, that does, like I say, that does go together pretty nicely for me. On the, I would say, on the, above the kind of, we say above the kind of brown bready character, that's when you start to get the brown sugars out of this one. One thing I would say as well is that in the bready character, it's quite, within that sort of bready character, there is a little touch of nuttiness there that comes out the further into the aftertaste that you go. But above the kind of brown bready side of things, there's a little bit of a, you start to get some of the leathery brown sugary characters out of this one. And like I said, the leathery character, because I do suspect this hasn't had too long a wort boil, I've said that many times, but you can feel there's a little bit of that leathery brown sugar in there. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of toasty brown sugar coming out of the beer too. So yeah, a nice little bit of a kind of toasty brown sugary character in there. Then you get the more oily brown sugar sitting on top of that. So if you go to the very dead centre of your palate, you can feel that kind of highly concentrated treacle molasses type note, and that's the alcohol of the beer that's giving you that. So you can feel that in the dead centre of your palate. As you move a little bit further out from that, you get a sweeter caramel, you get a little bit of kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotch underneath, and then yeah, underneath that you get a little bit of the toasty brown sugar, and then you get the leathery layer that I just talked about. Above everything, you do have a little kind of sprinkle of a McVitie's digestive biscuit type character coming out of this one, which is quite nice. So yeah, that's quite interesting. That this beer, it's, for me, it has a really kind of, it's dancing between being quite sweet in some sense, but then being a little bit more kind of roasty and boozy on the other side. It's a really interesting combination of things that's going on in this one actually. But like I say, I think it could do with a slightly longer wort boil, this one, just to give you a wee bit more of a kind of leathery dryness and things to it. But yeah, it's a nice, the way that this pieces together is really, really nice. So the I think that's quite interesting, but definitely on the yeah, on the back third of your palate, then we'll go for that border region between middle and back third of the palate. You get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, like a kind of you get a nice little bit of a kind of brown bready build up in there, and then on top of that, it's like a sweet brown rye bready sort of thing. But then the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the roasty, toasty kind of, you've got the dry kind of grainy bread crust. As I've always said, dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, whereas sweeter flavours come out a little bit more kind of further forward. And then yeah, you can definitely feel that in this beer. So yeah, you've got the kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. You've got a little bit of a more, you can feel the kind of rye bready layer in there is a little bit taller and more airy. Then you've got the wholemeal brown bready character above that, which is a little bit lighter and more airy as well. So the way that everything goes together in this sense is really nice. on the back third of the palate too. Above all of that, you can feel a little bit of the brown sugar, just the kind of drier and roastier side of the brown sugar, just creeping over the top of the bread and forming the top of that back third of your palate. But then above everything else, you get a little bit of the yeasty side out of the beer, so you can feel this sort of more airy, farmhousey. Yeah, you can definitely get a little bit of this kind of more airy, farmhousey brown bread out of this one. And the way that goes together is quite nice. But then you've got a little bit of honeycomb. You have got a little bit of this kind of honeycomb layer coming out of the beer as well, which is nice. So you can feel it's like a farmhousey, brown, grainy bread wrapped in kind of honeycomb and toasty sugar and stuff like that. But definitely you can feel on the back third of the palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the kind of middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. But yeah, the way that the malty side of this beer goes together for me is quite interesting. Like I say, you can tell it's quite a young barley wine. It's not had too long a wort boil, and that's one of the things. So this beer for me, it feels a little bit more raw than some of the ones you're going to get from other breweries that do this style. But still, I like this, and as I've said, I enjoy the style. You guys watching the channel know I'm a big sucker for these big brown sugary sort of things. Let's go to the hoppy side of this beer then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you get a wee bit of herbal character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the tongue, you get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity coming out of this one. So that's quite nice. That is quite nice how that goes together. For me, the floral aromaticity in this one kind of lingers into the aftertaste a little bit and it does give you a really nice kind of mix of things. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter grassiness coming out of this one, and the grassy character does have a good little bit of zestiness to it as well. And yeah, I do quite enjoy that about this one. That zestiness kind of lingers into the aftertaste quite a bit. But like I say, you could age this beer a little bit more and just the hoppy character would drop out a little bit more. Maybe one of the things with this one is that I'm drinking it just a little bit too young. But yeah, that's it could be that, it might not be anyway. But yeah, it's still got a good little bit of hoppy character to this one, which I do enjoy. On the front third of the palate then, the fruity side of the beer, so the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of brown bready build up coming out of this one, which again I do quite enjoy. It is quite like a sweet rye bread, but with a wholemeal bread on top. The base of that front third of your palate has a little bit more of the base of that front third of your palate. You've got a little bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty bread crust in there. You can feel the kind of rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. Yeah. So, yeah, I do like how that pieces together in this one. At the back of that front third of your palate, you do have a little bit more. If we look at the nice the oily bubble where the fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, it's kind of like I was thinking it would be from the aroma actually. So at the back of that front third of your palate, on top you've got a little bit of raisin, then a juicier plum underneath, then you start to get a bit of the drier prune, and a little bit of date, and then you can feel some sultanas and oily pear as you kind of move a bit further forward from that. But as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of figgy note coming out of this one. You do have a nice little bit of a kind of figgy note out of this one. And as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you start to get more of a kind of blackcurrant in the base and a blackberry on top of that. Yeah, you can feel that it's the kind of sort of blackberry and raisin kind of lingers into the aftertaste a wee bit, but you also get the kind of drier fruity notes coming out of this beer too, which are very, very nice. But yeah, interesting how this pieces together for sure. Like I say, some of the dryness and the dry fruitiness and toastiness and things that you get out of this beer, those are kind of English barley wine characteristics, but this beer, it leans more toward the American side of things. I think that is fair to say. And I think in terms of reviewing this one, perhaps I have made a little mistake with this one in terms of reviewing it so young. I maybe should have kept this one and let it age a little bit and then try it and see how it matures. But it's still in its young stage. It's very nice. I quite enjoy these beers when they're like this. So it gets a thumbs up from me, regardless. I've enjoyed this one. But I would be curious to maybe get another bottle of this and just let it age for a couple of years and see what it's all about. The one thing I would say is that it could potentially do with a slightly longer wort boil just to give it a bit more kind of dry, brown, sugary character. But that's maybe something they'll play about with as they do this recipe going forward. This one would be quite interesting to age in like cognac barrels as well, I would say, just because of the complexity of the fruity character. That could be an interesting thing to do with this one, to play with it. But yeah, I think Subbe Brgygeri have done a very solid job of this, and it has my approval. Wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again. I can feel the booze going to my head a little bit with it though, but when it's 14%, not really surprised. Yeah, so on the mouthfeel side of things, just to round off this review, I think this beer is definitely, it's full-bodied. Yeah, full-bodied, but bottom end of full-bodied I would add. Carbonation is very smooth. It's got a lovely oiliness to it, a lovely slickness. So I do like how that goes together. I think yeah, it's very slick and very slightly oily barley wine, this one, but it gives you that wee bit of dryness into the aftertaste too. But the malt base, like we said, we've got a nice little bit of kind of toastiness and things in there. Above that, you've got some nice roasty toastiness in there. You've got a nice little bit of bready character, lovely kind of oily brown sugars. And I think, yeah, the way that goes together is nice. You've got the oily sweetness in there, the dryness as well. Yeah, the malt base has a good little bit of complexity to this one, and that's only going to get better with time, of course, if you choose to age this beer. As it stands, I think this one maybe has about 50-ish IBUs, something like that, and obviously the hoppy character will drop down and smoothen out the further into the longer that you age this beer as well. Then you've got the nice big oily fruity characters coming out of it too. So yeah, I do like how this beer goes together, and I think it's a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. Lovely, just oily mix of dry fruity character and big oily fruity character as well. So a mix of American and English character in this one. Definitely more of an American barley wine, but a wee bit of the English kind of dryness and toastiness and things too, which is always nice to see. So yeah, as I say, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the barley wine, simple name, at 14% ABV from Subbe Bryggeri in Varberg here in Sweden, up in Halland County, of course. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Subbe Bryggeri as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But in the meantime, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.